Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Arise. It is your host, Catherine here. This episode is brought to you in part by CHEP, the host of the 11th Annual Addictions Conference, Inclusive Recovery, Addressing Diversity and Co-occurring Disorders. And today we're going to be talking about macro politics and how you might be able to get involved if that is something that you're interested in. Our guest this week is Jessica J. Mitchells. She is an LMSW who is a professor, and she's also the co-chair for the licensing committee with Social Workers for Justice. Welcome to the podcast, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Catherine. I love to talk to other social workers about this work because it's so important.
Yes, 100%. And there's a lot of misinformation out there around politics, and especially right now that with the election going on, we just hear it so much. And I do hear some people, on the Facebook streets being like, let's not bring politics into social work. And I'm like, who are you? I don't even know how that works. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, but before we go there, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I, as most social workers do, wear a few different hats. So I am a clinical assistant professor at Stony Brook University. I teach classes mostly focused on policy. I actually teach a class called Campaign School. It is an elective, but it teaches social work students how to run for office, how to actually do that, or alternatively work for someone running for office. But my preference is always that they do it themselves. I supervise students who intern in elected officials' offices and different advocacy organizations. So nonprofits that solely focus on the advocacy part of this, not service provision or anything like that. And I am also the co-chair of the licensing committee for Social Workers for Justice, where we are trying to get a law passed in New York State to eliminate that entry-level licensing exam so that we can get people, to work faster, because we have a social work shortage in New York State, as most of the country does, and we need more social workers, and we need more culturally competent social workers, and we're having a hard time with that. So this is one of the things that we are trying to do to make that happen.
Okay, awesome. Yes, very important work. And if people are interested in getting involved, is there a way that they can learn more about that particular topic as far as the licensing exam in New York goes?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, Social Workers for Justice New York. We have, a ton of information, fact sheets, links to, the ASWB reports about passing rates, which are pretty terrible for a professional licensing exam. This isn't a get into college exam. This isn't the SATs. So we should have much better rates than we do right now. And unfortunately, we do not. So all of that information is on the website. And of course, you can always
Beautiful.
reach out to us too.
Beautiful. Yes. And for the purpose of today's conversation, I really want to talk to those people who are interested in getting involved in politics, but maybe just don't know where to start, or the people who are like, no, politics and social work don't go together. Change my mind. What?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, that blows my mind. I don't know. Let's talk about this. Because this I saw on a Facebook group, someone's like, stop talking about politics. And man, they got their head torn off. And basically the narrative was, wow, how privileged is it to not have to think about politics in your work or in your therapy sessions or things like that. So I don't know, what is your opinion out there as far as social work and politics goes?
I do understand why sometimes like nonprofit managers and executives would be concerned, because there are tax implications, but there's a really easy solution to that. Just go talk to a tax lawyer, like figure out what you are legally allowed to do and then engage in that work all day, every day. I had a professor when I was in social work school, and interestingly enough, I did not go to social work school to be a therapist. I wasn't a pivoter. I wasn't someone who decided to get into politics after something. I've been engaged in my own way in politics since I was 5 years old.
Wow,
This is a
cool.
lifelong passion of mine. I went to school for social work so that I could study social problems. I already had a master's degree in public policy, and I wanted to study it from the perspective of what people needed, not what people in authority wanted to put on other people. So I really don't understand how people can ignore it. It is a privilege. You're telling me by saying you shouldn't be engaged in politics as a social worker that you don't have student loans, that you are not actually working with the most in need populations, that you're not working with people who don't have health insurance, all of those, different things, that every single one of those things is political. Those are policy decisions that are made by our state and federal government, sometimes our local government as well. And you can't ignore that. I had a professor when I was in social work school who said a social worker's job, and I wish I could remember which professor to give them credit, but I don't remember. But they said a social worker's job is always to be putting themselves out of business. You're supposed to be solving problems, not perpetuating problems. And people need help. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to minimize the need for people to be getting the services they're getting. They need them. But if we can fix the larger policy problems, then these problems wouldn't need to exist anymore. So we have to engage in this. We have to get the people that we're working with to engage in it too. If you're not experiencing the problem, it's very difficult for you to effectively convey what the problem is to people in power who can make changes. And if we can't get the people in power to make those changes, then we have to take their jobs away from them. That's really the most important thing. Vote them out, run against them, find someone else to run against them, because the decisions that are being made are important, but they're also not great decisions right now. We've had this problem for a long time, underinsured, lack of services. All of these things have existed for so long and we're not fixing them effectively. That's why they still exist.
Yes, yes, it's true. Politics literally dictate every part of the work that we do, from funding to grants to insurances to even safety and how we feel in our own communities. I know when there was Trump for president, there was a lot of racial tension. I personally felt it in my own family because we're a mixed race family and we live in a predominantly white area, and we started getting, some unpleasant experiences that I got scared, and I realized how much power that particular president had around the racial tensions. And if he were to just put a call out in one of his rants, like, it could be dangerous for people, right? Really dangerous.
It
And
was
so,
dangerous for people.
yeah, yeah, it was. People died. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, I personally feel that, and that's just one example, right? But it affects politics affects every part of the work that we do, and there will be certain client populations that they're really worried about this election and how that goes. I'm wondering, because we talked about what makes social work political, essentially basically everything that we do. So I'm wondering, if somebody's interested in getting involved in politics and they don't really know where to start or what to do or who to talk to, what kind of advice would you have for that person?
So there's a lot of different things that people can do, and some of it may depend on where you live in the country, but I would say there is an election coming up. There are a lot more things on the ballot than just the presidential election. It's so much. All of it is important, but there's so much more than just the presidential election. We focus on that this year because everyone can understand it. It's similar in every state, but if you want to start somewhere, you can start as a poll worker. So poll workers are a really important job that exists, in every state in the country. In some states, it's volunteer. And in some states like New York, they actually compensate you for the day and they compensate you for the training. The pay actually isn't that bad. It's different depending on what county you live in. So I'm not going to give out numbers. But yeah, there are other states that also pay people. I can't list them all off, but you can do
I know
that.
California does.
Yeah, see, California is a huge state too, geographically and population wise. So anyone, who lives in either one of those states, know that you can do this and get compensated for it. It's a great way to meet people who've been actively involved for a long time. And it's really just, you are literally helping people to vote. That is what you're doing. You're handing people ballots. You're telling them what polling place to go to, how to fill out the ballot, how to put it in the machine, or however you vote in your state. So that's really important. New York, too, also hires people to be translators at polling locations, and they pay you like they pay poll workers. I know translating can be a very, physically and mentally taxing thing to do, but if it's something you can do, that's a great way to also get involved and make sure that no matter what language you speak, that you can fully participate in the election. So that's a great thing for people to do. If you don't have all day to do something like that, or if you can't get off on a Tuesday, which I totally understand, you can just look up, anybody that you're interested in helping will take volunteers on a campaign. Some states, every state is different, but there's, state elections this year. The entire New York State legislature is up for re-election. There's other state legislatures up for re-election. There's some local races depending on where you live. If you find someone in your area who you're like, I want them to win, and go volunteer on their campaign. They're always taking volunteers. And if you don't want to work for an individual person, there's so many organizations out there that also do work just getting people out to the polls. Organizations that will have you drive people to the polls because they don't have a ride, make phone calls. And there's also advocacy organizations like in New York, Social Workers for Justice. This is an advocacy organization that I work with to try to get the laws changed here. These types of organizations exist in every state, and they're always looking for help. So there's no one place to send people. It's really dependent on what people are interested in and where they want to put their time. But just be brave. It was a brave thing to go back to social work school. Whenever anybody did it, you graduated, and now it's time to find that bravery again and just go volunteer for something that you're interested in helping with.
I love that. And a lot of really great ideas on how to get involved on a local level. It sounds like, just get connected with people in your community who are running or who may be doing work around politics already. We're going to hit pause on this conversation real quick because the next time that you need continuing education units, I highly recommend the Therapist Development Center. TDC has helped more than 100,000 social workers pass their licensing exams, including myself. I love that TDC CE courses are engaging and relevant. Amanda and her experts give us clear and practical skills that we can immediately apply to our work. Some of my favorites are their Edge of Life Suicide Prevention course, where Amanda shares her personal experiences, and their They Did What? Law and Ethics course that looks at real cases where therapists faced formal disciplinary actions. We are legally required to take continuing education to increase our competence, and most other courses out there don't actually teach the material in a way that we can learn it, but TDC does. Check out the links in the show notes. I'm wondering if there's somebody who is interested in running for office themselves. What are some things, for example, I'm thinking maybe an MSW student who's thinking, that would be kind of cool, or somebody who's been in the field for a little bit. Where do they even start? What happens next? What's their first step?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just do it, first of all. Everybody should. Okay, so the first thing really is to make sure that your address is the correct address on your driver's license, non-driver ID card, and that you're registered to vote there. That is literally step number one. Okay. Make sure that you legally live where you say you live, where you tell everyone else you live, because the ability to run for office is very dependent that you live and vote there. So that is absolutely step number one. Check your voter registration status, check with the DMV, make sure they have the correct address. After that, look at what is available in your area. So everywhere is different and everywhere has different things that you can run for. So in a lot of places, the local government stuff that you're going to run for, municipal, is stuff like library board, school board. These are really important positions. We have a huge problem specifically on Long Island where we have groups that have organized to get people to run for school board that want to ban books. They've banned the pride flag in a bunch of school districts, that are really dumbing down the curriculum and trying to lie to kids about US history and all of the things that you just absolutely do not want having happened in a school district. So, think about those positions. Same thing with the library board positions. They don't, not everywhere elects library board positions. We do in a lot of places in New York. Again, really important. You have people running who want to ban books, who just, are not doing these things for the right reasons. See if those seats are available. To me, that hyper local stuff is so important. It really does dictate what happens in the day-to-day lives of so many people. Libraries are the last place that people in the United States can go without the expectation of spending money, that they can just exist in this space and there's so many resources for them. So I'm very protective of, schools for the education and libraries for just the access. But if that's not something, if you're looking for something different, if you're one of those people who's like, no one ever paves my road and I get flat tires every couple of months, look at your town, look at your county, and see who represents you now. See how long they've been there for, because a lot of them have been there for a really long time. A lot of people don't pay attention to these elections. And if this is something that you want to do, go join the civic associations in your neighborhood, go to the school board or library board meetings in your neighborhood, go to the town board meetings, go to the political party meetings and find out, because a lot of times they can't find people to run for these positions and they're looking for people to run for these positions. The Nancy Humphreys Institute for Political Social Work is housed at UConn, and they're a great resource for social workers looking to run for office. Nancy Humphreys was a social worker who spent her whole life trying to train social workers to get them to run for office, and she was extremely successful at it. The conference still happens every year. It's happening February 28th and March 1st this year. And that's a great place to start because most people have passed the deadline for this year's election. But there are elections every year somewhere in the country. So that's definitely something I recommend people go to if they're considering running for office, because you will leave with all of the tools you need to run for office.
I love that. That is so many great places to be able to start. And I had no idea there was so many opportunities just opening, just waiting for people like you to apply.
Literally waiting for people to apply. There's so many races in this country, including things like district attorneys seats, that there is never an opposition. Most of the district attorneys in this country are reelected every year very easily whenever they have to run. They don't run every year, but there's someone up somewhere every year. And they just run and people don't run against them and no one tries to get them out of office. Our government is set up this way to be confusing, and it does confuse people and it makes it hard for people to want to engage, and you just have to push past that and learn the part of it that you want to learn. You don't have to learn all of it. Just learn about your local town, learn about your local county, just pick something.
Yes, I love that. And this has inspired me to get more involved in my local community because I'm thinking, I see the information for the school board meetings and I'm like, it's just another meeting. But now that you said this, and I know like saying out loud is common sense, but now that this has been pointed out to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should be going to these school board meetings to see what kind of people are there, what are their priorities, what are their values, how are they shaping the education of not only my child but the community and the future. And especially being mental health professionals, we have a unique perspective around how policies are going to actually play out in the real world and affect the mental health of the students and the families. There could be added stressors, added barriers. There could be so many things happening.
Yeah, and remember too that a lot of the jobs that social workers have are government related. So, public school is a public job and it's a public policy decision how many social workers to have in that school. The school boards in New York decide who gets hired and fired, what lines are going to be capped, what lines are going to be added. It's different everywhere, so I can't guarantee that it works this way in other places. But if you do have a local school board, that local school board is probably making those decisions. And if you want more school social work jobs for the kids, so that they get the help they actually need, and so that the students that are going to school for social work have jobs after they graduate, start running for school board.
Definitely. You mentioned an organization that helps social workers run for office. What organization was that?
The Nancy Humphreys Institute for Political Social Work. So they
Okay.
do a conference every year in the spring. This year it's February 28th, March 1st. They do a conference every year. It's run by social workers for social workers to teach them how to run for office.
Love it.
It's
I
great.
know I've also heard here in California, there's an organization, I believe it's through NASW California. It's called CalPACE. And one of their initiatives is also to support social workers in California who want to run for office. And so that could be another resource too, is check with your state NASW and see if they have any kind of support like that as well.
Yeah, most of the states do. Sometimes they also have, like an endorsement process, and sometimes they also have money that they can donate to your campaign because most campaigns, unfortunately, do still cost money.
Yes, for sure. So if you are planning to pursue this career route, we might as well find out who has the money and how we can get it done.
There are a lot of organizations that are, not even necessarily social work specific organizations, but run for something is their whole goal is to get younger people to run for office. So there is a lot of support out there, both in trying to plan a campaign, but also monetarily to donate to campaigns. Campaigns cost money, but you don't want to spend your own. You want to spend other people's money that you fundraise. And there's a ton of organizations that exist. It's just like cutting through all of the stuff to try to find the ones that can help. And it doesn't have to be social work related. It's great when we do have these social work organizations because I would love to have more social workers in office. And we do. And California has done a good job in the past of sending people specifically to Congress that are social workers, which is fantastic. But those numbers are dwindling and we need to get them back up.
Yes, for sure. So I don't know if you caught this, listener, but we kind of debunked some of these stories in your head that might be holding you back. Is one, if you don't have the money, there are organizations out there who can help you. And two, it sounds like we can't be too young to run for office. Is that what I'm hearing?
It depends on where you live, what the age requirement is, but for school boards, for library boards, usually for like town and county positions, it's 18. And we've had quite a few people over the years get elected to their school boards at 18 on Long Island. They ran their senior years of high school. They were kids who were a little bit older for their grade, birthdays, fall, different times. So you can do it. You absolutely can. You have to be 25 to run for the House. You have to be 30 to run for Senate. You got to be 35 to run for the presidency, but most of the time those ages are a little bit lower for state level positions. So run for something. The younger you are, the better. I want people of all age groups to run for office. We need more diversity of opinions in government all over this country.
Yes. And we will leave with this. If there is a teenager in office, I fully believe that you listening can do that job as well.
You can. You absolutely
Yes.
can.
So that is not a reason to not run. Just go, like Jessica said, just do it. Just go out there and get started.
Exactly. You have to start somewhere. Usually volunteering for someone else is a good place to start. You meet the people who are involved, you begin to understand the process, and then just jump in and do it yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I love this conversation. The link to Social Workers for Justice is in the show notes. If they want to get in contact with you, Jessica, what would be the best way to do that?
Just email me. My email is pretty simple. It's jjmitchell26@gmail.com. Happy to answer questions, point people in the right direction. I don't know everything about all 50 states, but I can find you someone who knows about your state.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And also, listener, if you got anything out of this episode, or if you know somebody who is really passionate about politics, about macro social work, or about running for office, please do them a favor and share this episode with them. We are all about sharing the knowledge. We're not trying to gatekeep around here. So open up your podcast app, click on the share button, text us to them right now, help somebody out. I'll talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Social Workers Rise podcast. I want to give one final shout out to one of our sponsors, Social Work Wealth Con 2024. Thank you so much for your support of this podcast. Check out this conference in October with the link in the show notes.